Hey, everybody, this is Andy Wheelock with the Coffee with the Geek program. This is our second episode of the kind of geek on culture episodes, and we're going to talk about the Netflix series Black Mirror. With me is Heather Krieger, wave Heather, and Jennifer Murphy from Williamsville School. We're hoping to be joined by our fellow colleague, Matt Mariglia, who is also going to come join us. We're hoping he's going to tap in here any moment. But just to maybe give you a background, if you missed our first one, or if you're not familiar with Black Mirror is a Netflix series. I think there's 4 seasons now, and there are probably maybe 3 or 4 episodes per season. And their kind of general theme is almost a Twilight Zone version of with technology. So most of them take a technology and maybe its implications, and then in most cases kind of expand it out to maybe the 20-foot view or 20-mile view, and it really kind of, most of them are very thought-provoking. Many of them are dark, but they kind of expose how technology can bring out in many of the episodes the worst in us, or can play out in dangerous ways. So in most cases, it's futuristic. The episode I wanted to talk about is one called Shut Up and Dance. Now, to give you a little bit of a background on it, it's again, it's a pretty dark episode. It starts off with pretty much a young kid in high school. He does something inappropriate, not realizing he's being filmed on his webcam. So he then receives an email from someone saying they have the film, and shows him the film, and basically has him go on this series of events that they have to basically tell him he has to do this, and then they'll release it, and then he has to do this, and it goes on a variety of episodes, including, I don't think this is giving too much away, but robbing a bank. And along the way, he's meeting others that are also being blackmailed by this mysterious kind of anonymous figure. So we'll start there, because I think one of the things that really kind of chilled me about this episode, many of the Black Mirror episodes kind of are more futuristic and more advanced. This one almost seems, with the technologies that's being displayed, they're using just cell phones, there are drones and that sort of thing, but it's almost, this one could really almost seem like it could happen right now. So let's start there. Do you guys want to just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I agree with what you're saying about the fact that it seems as though it could happen today. I have heard already that there are viruses and things called ransomware that can be downloaded, that someone can hack into your computer and download, where they do have access to your webcam. I think that is very disturbing. And I was talking to a colleague today who said, for a long time, in anticipating that sort of thing happening, he has his daughters, whenever they're online, take a sticky note and put it over their webcam, because you never know what could be filmed there. And it could, we don't know what kind of consequences something like that could have, someone watching what you are doing.
Yeah, and a quick search of the internet today also showed that I can learn to supposedly hack a webcam in 30 seconds. I can buy software for under $20 to allow me to hack a webcam. So I think that the issue is real. The struggle is real. And more and more of our students, we see, they open up their device to do something, and they have a Post-it, they have a piece of tape, they have blue painter's tape over their webcam. And I don't know, I guess I'm more of it hasn't struck me yet that I need to do that, but I also don't use my webcam that often that I have it enabled, so I don't know if I'm at risk.
That's a good point. I typically don't have mine enabled either, and I'm basically typing and staring at a screen. So, but you brought up the smart home devices, things like the Alexa from Amazon or the Google Home device. And we do have several of the Alexa Echo devices. And I think about, sometimes you're just joking around at your house, and you might say something that's taken out of context, and now that I've heard of this ransomware, where they do, if they have been able to capture something, they basically blackmail you, typically for money. I believe you said, Jen, that it can be Bitcoin.
Yeah, because it's hard to trace.
Exactly. And, how far would you go to keep your privacy if you are being blackmailed? But then again, the whole problem here is privacy. We think that things get better, but doesn't this seem kind of scary that everyone could know what everyone else is doing at every minute?
Yeah, and I think one of the technologies that are displayed is drones, and drones are certainly becoming a little more commonplace. They're certainly, the price point is down, and any kid can kind of do them. They are starting to come up with rules and regulations and laws. And I just saw something recently. One, it wasn't an assassination attempt basically done by a drone. So are drones maybe the next technology that might be pretty scary?
That is, imagine the kinds of film that could be caught on that. Anything. I mean, in some ways you think, all right, this is good. This could, perhaps detect a crime, before it is actually committed, for a bank robbery type of thing. If you were to see, certain activities take place, the law enforcement could get there at a very rapid pace ahead of the action. But again, I don't think that anyone should have the capability of invading the privacy of an American citizen. That's something that we have fought for, is, our having that, not Big Brother watching every second. And I read a book called The Circle. And if you haven't read it before, some people love it, some people hate it. It does take a bit to get through it. It kind of can be slow at points. But it talked about going transparent. And the company, The Circle, I think was kind of a playoff of Google, but making it so you wore a device where everything you said, you are basically carrying a webcam around with you, and anyone in the world can be watching you at any time. And they were trying to get government officials to be transparent, and it just became a dystopian society in there. But right now, it seems like we're going transparent without wanting to be transparent. People are infringing upon our,
Privacy.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you feel the same way I did? That's what spooked me about this particular one was that it seemed like it could really happen if somebody got something, took video of you doing something, Again, it doesn't even need to be something illegal, just things that you may do every day that you don't want the world to know about, kind of thing. Right. I mean, did it seem that?
Totally, because
that creep you out too?
One of the minor characters in that episode, someone whoever they were, the people that were committing these, having people do these acts, one of the women, she basically sent out some emails that were racist in general. And if that were to go out, I think that people can hack email right now. That can totally happen. And she was a CEO, wound up losing her job. And I am not at all, they didn't show us what the content of the email was. I don't know what exactly was said and things like that, but I could just totally see that happening. From things going on in the government, they're tracking people's texts and things like that right now, and making them public, things that are on devices. I don't know about you, but my personal texts that I have with my family and friends, sometimes a goofy, sarcastic thing, a little bitmoji that has, you whining about being in a meeting you don't want to be at. I don't want my boss to see that. No, but that is happening. They already can get into your email and texts. And
well, I think between, the live feed that you can get from a drone, and sometimes they're just not even a parent, I bike ride and we do the slow rolls, and they can be 3,000 people sometimes. And there'll be drone pictures and you didn't even know, you were engrossed in whatever, and you didn't even know the drone was there. I think that live feed and the fact that we enable things like geolocate me, this app wants to know my location. I think all that plays into this. Absolutely, this could happen today. I think it's
that was very disturbing. And it was interesting. All of the victims, so to speak, in this particular episode, the twist Oh, I'm not I'm not supposed to give a spoiler.
No, you can say some, but
all right. Well, anyway, this one had an interesting, like, it has like a good twist at the end, and it leaves you kind of, oh my gosh, like you have to rethink the whole show. You felt a certain way, and then you were like, oh my gosh, so it's so interesting. Like I was saying that, they get into people's texts and they are finding people, who have done things that are illegal. So do we then, I'm just putting this into today's, politically, you're probably seeing in the news political figures, they have gotten their texts and things like that, and finding out they did things that, went against the law. And so how do you feel about that? That's sometimes you might have felt a certain way about a person, and now you feel completely different. Like what is crossing the line? There's a dilemma out there in a way that I feel about this. Is that good that we found out about the crime and the criminal is now going to be put in their, be imprisoned or be fined or whatever,
losing their job, or
yes, like, okay, so does that mean that this transparent thing is a good thing? Well, I don't want somebody watching everything I do. So to me, that's a bad thing. Where is that line?
The other piece to me, and I think this comes to us as teachers and as parents, you see Kenny, the main character in this, drama, for lack of a better term. And you kind of feel for him, especially as a teenager, because that, and we talked about this in the last episode, is how hypersensitive we are. Like you get a pimple on your forehead when you're a teenager and you feel like the whole world is watching it. And then to have something like this, where you do something, is wrong, or, and, again, I don't know, just talk about, I guess, kids from a kid's perspective. And again, kids are using Instagram, Snapchats, all these things, sending out pictures that probably, 20 years from now, they're going to say, I wish I really didn't do that. Maybe let's talk about it from a kid's perspective. And Kenny, I think we feel pretty compassionate for Kenny at first, and then it gets deeper.
Developmentally, that's why they're kids, right? They don't
True.
have that sense of self, and they don't understand. I don't want to say right and wrong, right? They really don't have those skills yet to determine some of that. So, and that puts a whole nother piece into it, which really makes you just ache for Kenny, because honestly, people are like, well, so what? Who first started to watch it, the reaction was like, well, big deal. Then do that, right? Tell everybody, show everybody whatever Kenny was doing. It's not that big a deal. Did he pick his nose? What'd he do? But it's huge for kids, like you said. It's whole.
If that's online forever, like you were saying, a pimple bothers them, or bothers people. Just not even having their makeup on, kids will totally, if someone was watching them and they didn't know it. But some kids do some inappropriate things, like you were saying, the pictures that people send to each other that might not be appropriate, even little memes that they find, at a very young age. Kids are exposed to things, so they're sending these on. The problem is now everything is recorded forever on the internet, and it's there for people to find. When we were children, would I have wanted my parents to hear every conversation I had around my friends when I was young? Right. Did I maybe say some inappropriate words here and there, that they would never, but I would have been horrified if they had heard that, and now that would have been recorded forever.
For posterity.
Yeah, exactly. Or, if I had ever gone to, an establishment that was for 21 and older when I was 20.5, and,
I had a beverage.
That's a good one.
Yeah, for kids, and I see kids taking pictures of themselves, underage kids that can't drink, with alcoholic beverages, and that gets out there. Now they've committed a crime, and that's going to follow them. You already know, you're hearing of future employers looking into the social media accounts of people that are working for them. Just recently, the New York Times, there was a quote unquote scandal. They didn't fire the woman, but someone that was hired to work for the New York Times, they looked into her Twitter feed, and years ago she had tweeted some racist comments, that never left her. She may have tried to delete them later on, and she might feel completely different. When you're younger, you're not thinking clearer. I don't know. So scary.
Yeah. So let's talk about kind of the morality a little bit more. And Jen, in the kind of in our notes here, and I'll share this out with everybody when it's finished, but you or somebody, maybe Heather, this was you as well. Tell me about the program that Kenny downloads and its name connection. That was kind of interesting.
Oh, Heather found this. I added the piece into our notes, but Heather was reading something about the malware program. Is called Shrive.
Yes.
And so the meaning of shrive, it's an old word, but the meaning is basically like repentance or
for your sins.
Yeah, repentance for your sins or making amends type of thing. So so that was interesting. Like I glossed right over that. I didn't pay attention to it. Heather, after watching the episode the 10th time.
I only watched it twice, really.
It's tough to watch. I couldn't watch every piece of that a second time because it was tough to watch.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. But I watched it last night because I knew we were going to be doing this today. And it was a long time ago that I watched it. So when you watch it the second time, and I also, there was some foreshadowing that occurred in that episode that I didn't pick up on at all. Watching it the second time, I was like, oh, didn't see that.
Yeah, there was some foreshadowing there, and I do remember that even from the first time. Like after again, when you find out what Kenny really did, you kind of were like, oh,
that makes a little sense.
Yeah. That's really fascinating. And the again, the morality play, like, did they deserve it in the end? And again, like, how far would you go to keep your privacy? I think are both like big pieces that come across that,
Yeah. Yes, I think that's huge.
And it also made me think of the piece where, okay, so people can make horrible mistakes. And you tend to think, I wish these horrible things would happen to them. And then when you see a horrible thing happening to someone for a terrible mistake, where's that? Should there be empathy there? You hear of horrific crimes on the news sometimes, and you want that, you wish as though that person never existed. But I don't know, did you find yourself in there? Before you knew various crimes and various things, you're feeling this sympathy, empathy for the character up until then you find out, oh, and you're so conflicted because you cared about the character at a certain point. And then you think, I don't know. I felt myself like that there was two sides of me going back and forth. Well, they deserve this. No, I don't know. It's kind of like, what are your thoughts on torture? In our country, that we were allowed to, I shouldn't say we, certain officials, they use torture methods against criminals. And this kind of psychological torture, even though someone might, the terrorists had done, horrific crimes, is torture acceptable?
It's that line again. Where is that line?
Well, I think it also highlights, a piece of our culture that, again, you talked about how, like, Twitter is forever, everything you post. And even if you think about emails, and as you were talking, I was thinking back, do you remember like the early days of just email? Remember those, someone would send those jokes around, and pass these jokes on, and they were very inappropriate jokes. And, in the beginning, you're just like, oh yeah, I'll just pass it on. I'll forward the joke, not thinking it comes back on you kind of thing. But, when we think about, again, like employers looking at your history, have we lost like some forgiveness too? And can we see that, we've all done things we're ashamed of and embarrassed, and we'd be embarrassed if people knew, um, you know, but, I think about, even the Roseanne Barr thing, which was a, highly inappropriate comment, but is there any forgiveness there anymore?
I know. Isn't that interesting? I find myself battling and thinking about that too. Like stand-up comedians, for instance, say these horrible, horrible things if you look at them literally, but jokes and sarcasm. Many comedians are coming out now and saying, you know what? I won't even do this routine anymore because I'm going to be labeled A, B, C.
Yep. But that is a good point. Have we lost that ability to forgive? I mean, there are bad decisions, there are mistakes. Does that mean I'm inherently bad? Is that, I made some choices that we've, again, all made bad choices, and you wish this day would go away. But have we lost that ability to look from farther away and say, okay, what are we going to learn from it? What did you learn from it?
Do you think there's redemption in the stories? And just so for those people who haven't watched it, Kenny's not the only story here. There is someone else that he meets along the way that actually there's kind of a friendship there. But is there redemption for these characters? And again, is there, if we think deeper into the plot, is this something to tell us that maybe we need to start doing the right thing when we don't think people are watching?
Yeah. What is it at Heim? Character is doing the right thing when no one is watching.
Right.
Yeah. So I know it is interesting. None of us are perfect, and we've all made mistakes, and I learn from my mistakes. But sometimes some poor choices are much worse than others.
Well, I guess, as teachers, have we maybe walked away from that? I think, again, talking about religion in school, or just, what's right and wrong can sometimes be almost taboo subjects in a way. Have we walked too far away from that to the point where now, we don't stress enough, to our kids that, you need to do the right thing. And this is, there are some right things you need to do, and that, someone's watching at this point.
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
we used to say, God was watching. Now it's everyone's watching. God and everybody else.
Right.
Don't post it on the internet if you didn't want your grandmother or mother to read it. Right. It's the reality. It's out there.
That's parental observation of what kids are doing. At first, I think parents were very close to their kids watching what they were doing on the internet. And now that it's become so commonplace, you don't maybe think about it as much. But do you remember Kenny actually went to the great length of putting a padlock on his door?
Oh, yeah.
That parental, no, you're not going to put that, and parents can.
Well, and I read something, I forget where about this particular episode. Is this a commentary about the absent parent? Because
good point.
There's this blow up between him and his sister, and then he puts a padlock on his door. Mom goes out the door. There's no evident other parent in the house, and we couldn't really figure out what Kenny and his sister sat down to watch. We kind of thought, well, even what they were watching was maybe a little questionable.
On TV.
So
parental supervision.
Yeah, it was part of that a comment about just exactly that. As parents, we, you walk that fine line of too much of a parent, too much of a helicopter parent, to the absent parent. We had a conversation today. Do we read our children's texts anymore on their phones? They're teenagers. It's a violation of privacy in some homes. In other homes, heck yeah, we read everything, So, have we strayed from that too as parents?
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that, and I saw that you put that as a question there. It's just, and again, the struggle is real as parents. We're pulled in so many different directions. often our kids are left, unsupervised, even, in the same house, maybe if you're doing something and kids are watching whatever, I mean, I think back to, when I was a kid, we had, HBO was the taboo thing to watch. Of course, we had one TV. So if we're watching it, my father was usually there with his newspaper, and the newspaper would come down and he'd tell us to turn the channel.
Remember when a George Carlin show was something that was the scary, you had to be the most strict about. Now, oh my gosh, they can get their hands on anything with a device that's in their pocket.
Yeah. So, well, I don't know that we've come up with. I think maybe where we've come back to is that we need to start maybe reining in and getting to a balance of where technology leads. We need to really start thinking about privacy and I think, maybe we'll need to address, I think we have to address this eventually at a legislative level, for people that are using, inappropriate pictures as blackmail for people. I think we're going to start to need to strengthen some laws maybe, or, again, rethink about privacy with drones and everything that's going on. I think this episode definitely highlights that. And I also think maybe we need to just go back as teachers and parents and start having those real conversations again. If we're not, I mean, I know many parents and teachers already are, but maybe we need to really, think about having those conversations on a regular basis about, doing the right thing and, what kinds of pictures you should take of yourself. And then what you're doing, and know that in today's age, you don't get a lot of mulligans,
Yeah, there's really no do-overs because there's a recording of everything that you've ever done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, thanks. This was again, I get kind of chilly just thinking about this episode. It definitely challenged me to the core a little bit. But I think the last time I said I wanted to talk about metalhead, so I do want to get back to that episode because I do think that was kind of chilling too. So hopefully we can jump back into metalhead.
Yeah, we had a little angst about this one leading up to our
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, it was
pretty deep moral.
Everyone should watch it. Everyone should watch it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it does really challenges your thinking a lot, and again, in uncomfortable ways. But maybe that uncomfortableness will help with to make things better.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much for taking your time. School's back in session soon, so
yeah. Good to see you.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
So long, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.